Hello everyone and welcome to a sprawling new episode of the StudioMEcast. I am your host, Peter, joining you from StudioME. And if you like the look and sound of this podcast, well, you can book the space yourself on our website at StudioME.me. We have our main location here in East Liberty in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we also have opened our first new location in Oakland. If you take a look at your screen and notice all that B-roll, doesn't it look lovely? Can't you imagine just promoting your business or podcast or whatever in that space? Well, I hope you can, and we hope to see you soon. But enough of all that, because now we are joined in the studio by a special guest. Jacob Hecht will be joining us, and he is a director, producer. He was the team leader for a 48-hour film project this past round, and I enjoyed and was moved by his acceptance speech during the encore screening for the best of for that 48-hour film project here in Pittsburgh. And if you're the type of person to like, share, and subscribe, well, don't let me stop you. On with the show. Jake, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peter.
Absolutely. So you did the 48
Yes.
recently, and your film was called Holes of Glory. You were the team leader and the director, and your team name was Synergy, correct?
Yes.
Was this your first 48 or no?
So this was technically my fourth time directing a 48.
Wow, fantastic.
This would it's just the one I would feel would probably we've actually had success with and actually done well with, because I have found that when every filmmaker in Pittsburgh is also trying to get people to be on their team, it is very hard when everyone's filming at the same time to get a team that you like and trust together. So like for the past 448s, it's been a lot of like mixing and matching and finding who I work best with, and we've kind of like finally settled on a team. We really like jive, we get along, we kind of like understand how everyone works. And also like the 48 is also a very good opportunity to like get some real good practice in and get your work out there. You get to meet a whole lot of people you normally I don't think would. So I think it's a mixture of just having enough practice in there mixed with we have the right people surrounding just the entire team to really actually made a film that we're really happy with.
That's fantastic. I thought your film played very well at the encore screening. I laughed and laughed, and I was really just pleased with the just the comedy in it. Like it's very like just all the jokes you had with like cornhole, whether it's like the people throwing the bags and catching them repeatedly, like the training sequences. I thought it was super creative. And I also for it you had you got audience choice for Group D, correct?
Yes, we did.
Congratulations on that. Yeah.
That meant the world.
Yeah, I was very moved by your acceptance speech. I thought it was very, very good. It's hard to do acceptance speeches sometimes because they're like, you won, and all that. But you hit a lot of really cool notes for that.
Yeah,
Do you remember it?
I remember a good bit of it. I remember one of the first words I said walking up on stage was, "This meant the world. I've never won anything in my life." And then I branched into thinking like a lot of the people that have mentored me and just gave me guidance for the last like how many years, like learning how to be a filmmaker and an artist. And I had to make sure I thanked some people when I got up there.
Absolutely, yeah.
I thanked PJ Gaynard anytime I have like a filmmaking question or like how to like improve, or like, hey, this script, he's given us notes on this and that. His first response is typically, call me. And then like he'll like give me a rundown, like really, really in depth. Like he's a freaking fantastic human being. Ted Wilkerson's the same. Like I met him through PJ when he got married for like the 6th time. And when I say 6th time, it's not like, oh no, he's married 6 different women. It's like he's just married his wife 6 times as like a cute, memorable thing. So like that's PJ. Not gonna.
He's a wonderful man.
Wonderful man.
Wonderful man.
I met Ted at his I'd say 5th or 6th wedding,
Mm-hmm.
like in the past year. And Ted's been a great mentor. I text him all the time. I've looked at his scripts. He's been helping me out. Like he showed me the Blackmagic camera app, which is what we used to film our 48 on, because we had my friend, our director of cinematography, Michael. He came on very late because our previous DP the week of went, so my work said I can't get off. So I was panicking the week of, and I had Michael on the team, and I was like, hey, Michael, do you want to be the DP last minute? And so we met up. He had his camera, he had lenses and whatnot, and I was like, well, we kind of planned on filming on an iPhone 15. How do you feel about filming on an iPhone? Because I got a gimbal for it, and Michael's like, we were shown how to use a gimbal in film school once. So we met up midweek, and I remember doing research this entire project, thinking what are some creative ways to use a gimbal? So we attached during our practice run, on Wednesday before the 48, we attached our iPhone to the gimbal and then attached the gimbal to a tripod and just extended the tripod as far as it could go and then raised it above our heads. And that's how we kind of okay, we could probably use this for a jib shot or just some creative ways and whatnot. And that's how we got some of the shots in there I thought were pretty creative. So Michael Junker, highly recommend that man. He's cracked. And then I thanked my dad, because my dad's an insanely hard worker, and you watch that for the entire time I've been alive, and that really sets the tone for how you are as a human being for the rest of your life. So I had to thank all those men.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. It seems really cool that a lot of things happened this 48 for you, where it's this big milestone with this the recognition of the audience choice, and then also, as you said, the success of forming a team that you just described. And you've got a lot of cool stuff coming up, which we'll talk about in a second, but I want to take it back. Where did this journey start for you? Where did you get bitten by the bug of filmmaking? Did you go to film school? Where would you say this idea of becoming a filmmaker first began?
I think I had a little bit more of an indirect path than most filmmakers, if that makes sense. So obviously when I was in high school, I started out playing sports and whatnot, and then I ended up taking film production and at that point, even when I did that, I was also an actor at that point. So even when we did film production, it was very much okay, you're on camera. You're not the guy behind the camera. So I didn't really get a whole lot of hands-on experience too much. I had a general understanding of what would always go on behind the camera, but I was very much in front of the camera most of the time. And then when I hit college, I branched very much into theater, was in theater for a few years. I love it to death. Haven't been on stage in a couple of years now.
Is it plays or musical theater, both?
Both.
Yeah?
Both. I got a real late start there too. I started taking singing lessons in, I'd have to say, 2019.
Okay, yeah.
And when I was at BC3, I was the president of their theater club there. I went gung-ho in the theater. I was still an actor, but I was very much the kind of guy that would talk to everyone. So I was very much, hey, you're still the face. You're not behind the scenes yet. And then when I transferred to CCAC for their acting program, I kind of at one point was I kind of want to do the 48 again. Because I decided to be on set for another team, and I saw this entire sequence of events on how this all unfolded, and I was I want to do a 48. That was harder than it looks. Because the first 48 I ever did, I thought it was going great. We had everyone together. Script went well. Granted, Saturday, our lead actor dropped, about 3/4 into the day because his mom got in a car accident.
Oh, my goodness.
So we were I wasn't going to be the dick that was no, you can't go see your mom.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to come back and finish it out on Sunday. So we had 4 hours to edit. and
Yikes.
basically we got like the first initial edit, so they were just throwing scenes together like from the big pile of scenes we had, and I was like, great, how long is it? And they went 19 minutes.
Whoa.
For context, your film has to be 4 to 7 minutes in a 48. So I was like, okay. And so they started cutting it down again, got it down to 9, eventually got it down to 7. And then we submitted it somehow. And then we all sat down and watched it. First like 2 minutes. I was like, okay, this isn't bad. I'm jamming with this. The rest of it, no.
Yeah.
Not great. Not great at all. There was a couple portions in there where it was like you could hear me yell "cut." And then I remember
I've heard that actually on a couple 48s over the years where you hear someone say "cut," like it's like in the screening, and it's like, well,
they ran out of time to edit.
Yeah.
So like, and then I remember getting a text from PJ like, "Hey, where's the line?" And I was like, "What do you mean the line's in there? It's got to be in there." I made sure we got the line. He was like, "I don't see it. You got to give me the timestamp of where this line's at." And I went back and looked, and I was like, "We don't have the line." No. So obviously that was not a 48 I went to go see. Well, granted, I was in Rocky Horror at that point, so like.
Cool. Were you in that with PJ? He mentioned doing Rocky Horror.
No, I was not. It was a different thing. It was the last musical I ever did. As of late, I was Frankenfurter.
No kidding.
Yeah,
cool.
The curly hair kind of helps the
happen,
situation.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, and at that point, like I saw what happened, and I was like, okay, we gotta improve a little bit here, and so obviously you round up another group of people, you know, like you try to like get things together, and you slowly build your crew over the years. Like, let's see, this was my 4th 48, so that was okay. So today's 2024. So like I think we finally got to a point where we were like gelling very well. I have a very good communication with my friend Adam Seibert. He was our editor. Really good rapport there. Michael, like we're just hitting the ground running. Like I'm loving it. We're gonna start playing D&D together. That's always fun.
Oh, nice. Have you played before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good bit.
Do you ever DM?
I'm gonna be DMing this one shot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Basically, because we have a new player in our group. Brian Marcheski, like he said he's gonna like join us next Saturday. It's the first time he's ever played.
Cool.
And of course, like I like to give my players like a feel for what they want to do, in terms of what kind of story they want to do. And so I was like, I put in the group chat, and I was like, okay, guys, here's the options I've come up with the top of my head. Number 1, the party has unleashed a monster, and they got to figure out how to put it back. Number 2, Saw. And number 3, a fucked up Christmas special. And everyone voted for the fucked up Christmas special, and I was not expecting that in June. So I've got that going on next Saturday.
Nice. And best of luck to you. That sounds like that'll be fun.
Oh, it'll be great. I lost my train of thought.
No, I derailed you with the D&D things. So,
No, it's good.
but no, that's so that's you. So you started more as an actor, theater, and just gradually moved toward being behind the camera.
Yes.
Is that something you had wanted to do for a while before doing it, or did it just kind of occur to you?
My skill set's always been really good at just organizing people. So it's something I always wanted to get to at some point. It's just when you're so in love with something for how many years, and it's just like my focus was on acting for the longest time, which I think has kind of helped me as a director, because one thing I will recommend for any director, and actually PJ Gaynard actually told me this himself. He was like, well, Jake, you're an actor. So as an actor, you have the ability to actually understand where an actor is coming from and actually help them out and get what you need out of them, out of a scene. Versus if you're a director first and behind the camera, it's kind of harder to get what you need out of an actor, like because you just don't understand like where they're at mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in terms of my skill set, like I definitely am stronger there, and I'm more of a work in progress when it comes to like the technical end of it. Like I understand like your general stuff of it, but I definitely need to get like more into the nitty gritty and get a lot of practice in terms of the handling your camera. Like I know the general setting, like you're adjusting your ISO, you want that to be as low as possible, adjust your aperture. Like I know that.
Right.
It's just I gotta get like a little bit more settled and consistent.
But you're coming from the theater,
Yes,
into filmmaking, so
yeah,
that's really cool. It's fascinated me for a long time that at every level of filmmaking, whether it's like people who are doing like starting to get into directing from the 48, more independent filmmakers such as yourself, or if you look all the way up to big A-list Hollywood stuff, there's been this really consistent, well, I don't know about consistent, but it's not unheard of for actors to become directors. It's like even Charlie Chaplin way back when was doing that, like that, or Kevin Costner or Denzel Washington. A bunch of actors have moved toward directing, and I've always found that to be kind of interesting that we don't see that as much from other positions in filmmaking. Like you don't usually hear about a director of photography becoming a director. Not that it's never happened, but it's just, I guess, less common of a thing. I've been musing on that for a while as to why that might be, but anyway, so you've got. You came from the theater, you've moved more toward directing, and this was your fourth 48. So, what is, before we started rolling, you started talking about how you're really more comfortable in comedy. Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I, once again, thoroughly enjoyed the comedy of your film. It was one of those films where there kept being like another little like twist or joke in it that just made the audience go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just said that, like when the cornhole killer starts talking,
Yeah.
all that. But now let's talk a bit more about where you're going now with it, because it sounds like you still have a love for the theater and acting, and perhaps there's more for you there. But when it comes to working with this team, you mentioned that you're looking at doing your first project outside the 48. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the project's name is going to be called For You. That's going to be our first film. It's going to be more of a dramatic piece. General plot is man's out with his best friend. He's talking about like, hey, how's the kid? Like you just had a kid. How's that going? He's like, oh, it's great. Lack of sleep, but it's going great. And then he's like, he comes home and he finds a note on the little like a table with a ring on top of it, and he finds out his fiance left him.
Oh man.
And so I want to show him going through like the process of grief and like how hard it is to go through something like that. Because we initially got the idea from my friend Adam, because basically his fiance left him about a month before the 48.
Oh my goodness.
And so we were talking back and forth, and I was just like, he said something that was I think a really kind of like inspirational to me, is they didn't do it to you, they did it for you. And we kind of run with that theme of like, when someone leaves you in the long term, it's probably for the better. Because you got to think, like, if you continue going through a relationship that is going to end badly, it is better for it to end earlier than later. Because you got to think, if you're with someone for how many years and you go like, yeah, I'll marry him, and then you have kids. Well, now you've got kids in a situation that can get really messy really fast, so now you're affecting them. You can think like, oh, you got financials all tied up in that, and basically I think that's a really good message to really get across, and that's the direction we're going to try to take the film. Obviously, it's our first dramatic piece, so we're sitting there writing a script, and it's the most painful thing I've ever gone through. because I'm sitting there, I'm giving him notes, like we're getting notes for how many people. And Adam's like, dude, this is so painful. Like, this is like a 10-year-old child that I've raised from like the ground up.
Yeah.
And then I sit down and I look at what he's done with it. And I'm like, okay, so you got to cut that. You got to cut like, cause like I learned the lesson of kill your darlings a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. This is Adam's first time like writing something. Mm-hmm. So like he's having a harder time learning the lesson of kill your darlings. Mm-hmm. And he's even said it because like, that's why he made the joke of like, it feels like you're asking me to take a 10-year-old kid that I raised up and put a bullet in him in the back of his head. Mm-hmm. So like, and like, yeah, because like, and granted, he's really great at that because like it takes him like a day to like get over the pain, and he's like, okay, we gotta knock this out, and then we get back at it. But the reason, I know you brought up comedy before, and it's just like we lean a lot more towards comedy because even when we're like writing the script, right, every idea that would initially come out of our brains was just comedic. Because we had this one scene where he sees like his woman with another man, and basically the first thought that popped into my head was like, what if she comes out in a bathrobe? And then he comes up behind her in a bathrobe himself and just like wraps his arms around him and they're dancing. And he's like, Jake, that is probably not the best way to go about it. And I was like, why? He was like, that can just look really weird. And I know for a fact it would look really weird. And especially like, and he popped the bubble. And I was like, okay, that looks really weird. So we kind of like, we changed it around a little bit. But we both agree, like after this one, we're like, okay, we're hitting the 48 next, and then we're going right back to comedy.
Yeah. I think this sounds really interesting to me because you've got, messing, getting outside your comfort zone with just the tone that you're going for, but also the fact that your film is being inspired by real life. It's not like a biography,
Oh,
right?
no.
But it's, like you said, the idea came from Adam's experience, and also having something to say, not just having the film be telling people stuff like, oh, here's a film, here's what is it, but like the idea that there is some kind of messaging in it, like that y'all are expressing something is great, Yeah. And I like that there's also, a bit of I don't know if I'd call it optimistic or hopeful, but there is some kind of positive messaging in this really horrible situation that you're describing, and I can see how it would be, even though it's like, this is awful what's happening here, how that could be easy to fall into, oh, well, let's make it funny sad, and that y'all are keeping yourselves accountable to the goal is really cool for that. So did you have when you were in theater, did you mostly do comedy there as well, or was that a bit more varied?
Now I got to go right back down the rabbit hole of what I've done.
Yeah.
Because let's see, before the pandemic hit and then the show shut down, like right before, like it shut down like when COVID was happening. Like we got all the way to Tech Week, so like I went through the entire process. The first musical I auditioned for was Shrek the musical.
Oh, cool!
I was Shrek, really excited for it.
Oh, nice.
And then it shut down. And then the show before that, I was Mortimer Brewster in Arsenic and Old Lace. That was also a comedy. And I looked at, and then I guess here you got Rocky Horror. Yeah, I would say that's more of a ridiculous piece. I think I've always been more focused as a comedic person.
What compelled you to move toward a more serious tone with this next project?
Well, as I've gone through the 48 4 times, I kind of thought, well, the 48 obviously is a great way to show off your work and network and meet so many amazing people. And I can give you a list of people I've met over the course of this 48. And I'm like, these are awesome people. I would recommend the hell out of them. It's also an opportunity for anyone doing it to really stretch. And I want to take that mindset into anything I do. is you want to make sure you keep stretching, especially in areas you're weak, because if you don't, you're going to get very quickly find out that when you are put in a position where you need to actually accomplish what you want to do, and it's in an area you're weak, it's going to show up. Very much so. I can remember the 48 we did last time. Cinematography, I think it was much, much weaker. And I have found I did a lot of prep between my last 48 and this 48, and I see the difference tenfold. And like everything that we did cinematography wise, we were very static last time. We really sat down for the majority of the film. Our shots weren't dynamic. Things were pretty unclear. So I remember looking at that and getting notes from PJ, and he was like, you got to get really more dynamic with that camera. You're very much sitting in a corner the entire time. And I looked at that and I was like, he is right. So
yeah,
you gotta and that's an example of like where you're weak will show up. So I think it's really important for anyone to really look at where you're weak and improve in that area. So we improved cinematography wise. And I think I can recommend for anyone doing the 48, especially if you keep repeatedly doing it, look at where you're weak last time, pick a focus and go, we're going to improve in this area and mainly focus in this. We're improving mainly this. And you will find every time you do a 48, because it happens twice a year in Pittsburgh, even if you're not practicing outside, you will get better every single time. And we won Audience Choice this time. Owen P. Stanley got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. We got nominated for Best Makeup again, because we were previously. So I think success really builds on itself. So when you work on yourself, it builds.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that's been really great to see in the 48 and beyond, is just with seeing teams that have, like, if you are around for a while, you see some of the teams that show up again and again, and you get to see that growth, and you see it happens in the whole community. It does. The 48 really is a factory for improvement. It's incredible. It's and one of the things I love about the 48, because we get people who are, like, if someone moves to Pittsburgh and they, email around and introduce themselves and all that, we get newcomers who, will say, hey, come into the studio, we'll give you a tour, and, kind of see, like, what are you interested in doing? And a lot of them, are interested in getting interested in the independent film scene here in Pittsburgh. And I always tell them, like, get involved with the 48. It's the best way to meet people. Pretty much everybody either does or has done it. And, and the ones who don't do it, I'm pretty sure don't ever say never again, and there's events that go on throughout the year, and the actual 48 happens twice. So it's a really great resource and builds up the community, and it keeps growing. It's like every other year, there's like more teams than we've had for the past several. So yeah, it's really great.
59 this time.
It's nuts. Oh man, was that a record for Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember PJ specifically in the team leaders chat and all over Facebook going, this is the most teams we have ever had in Pittsburgh.
Nice. That's great, because he's been I think every year that he's been the city producer, it's gotten more and more every time, and so it's nice that that it just keeps doing that. It's so great. And it's always, I love going to the 48 screenings also, because you never really know what you're going to get. There's going to be the requirements there, but you don't know if you're going to see a really light, wholesome comedy or something that's really not safe for work. It's it can be all over the board. It's just like Russian roulette with the screening, so it's just great to see, whether you have just a family during quarantine who two parents with their two kids made a film, or you've got a team of 30 or 40 full-time professionals who have joined together for a team, and then it's all like happening on the same screen. And it's like, hey, this is Pittsburgh. It's great. So
It's
I
great.
love
It's great to see like the art everyone puts out
Mm-hmm.
in varying levels, and I think it's great for people just getting into the 48, like to network.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get to see some people that you would have never met otherwise. Like, cause yeah, you think about like the big names in Pittsburgh. Like, obviously you always need to network and you need to meet new people, but I think you've seen like I've met more people in that 2 to 3 week period of like all the screenings than I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like all at once. Like I see like I don't think I'm the only one like in that boat, because now I've seen like all kinds of like student teams like start to take that approach.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like La Roche University for Be Yourself. That film I loved. I remember seeing it was a 79 production. I forget which school, if it was from a school. Like they won a couple awards. Like there were a lot of teams like student film wise that you get to kind of see like every year, like the next generation up and coming, and like it's a great opportunity for them, I personally think. And like I think it's a really cool idea to implement it in that in your curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very short term project, so it's not like a film thesis like that you have like an entire semester to do.
Right. Yeah.
You gotta like, I think that's freaking great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great opportunity for them, anyone really. And like you get to meet some amazing people that you otherwise would not have, and you do well, and you're gonna get rewarded for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's I liked how even with the student films, I felt this year that in general, like the films had really good like a really good grasp on story.
Yeah.
You know, like even if some of the films maybe like are at different levels of production value or how well they were produced, let's say, it's like they still like the main thing that was coming across with most of the films for me is like, oh, you've got a concept and like a clear journey for your main character, you know?
Yeah.
And that was really nice, because that's something that everybody talks about, but you don't always see. And it was a sign for me, like, oh, whoever's running that film program for the students there is like making sure that they learn about like what story is, you know, and because that's the juice that's hard to get for the most.
Yeah, because if you don't have a good story, like you don't have a film.
Yeah, you might have a nice screensaver, but
Yeah.
that's a good reel for your demo, like, you know, demo reel shots. But yeah, if there isn't a story there. Yeah. So, all right, well, cool. One of the things that I like to ask people at this point is, so we've heard about your acting and theater experience. You're getting more behind the camera. You've got this team and this project coming up here. But do you do you draw inspiration from other areas of your life? Like, do you have other hobbies or interests that aren't explicitly filmmaking or theater, like, or don't involve screens or whatever, that help inform your filmmaking?
Define inform, like
It's probably just inspire, like Chuck Jones, who made all those wonderful Bugs Bunny cartoons. You know, it's like, well, he read about everything. He knew a lot about ballet and opera, which is why he could do The Rabbit of Seville and What's Opera Doc. It's like he got the basics of animation and then learned about other things, and then was able to have that inform and inspire what his films were actually about, you know?
Okay.
So, I don't know, are there, like for me, I get a lot of inspiration from history. Oh, sorry, hang on, let me stop that. For me, I get a lot of inspiration from history. All right, I study and learn about history all the time. I have a lot of other interests, but history, it's like, yeah, you can make a historical film, but history isn't explicitly cinema necessarily, right? Are there interests you have, music or anything that is part of what, I don't know, gets you creatively inspired?
I think, I don't know if this really fits, But basically, when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with autism. And I, for the longest time, and still do in a lot of areas, struggle with social cues and just dealing with people. And it may not seem like it because I am a social butterfly at the 48. And what happens with me, I get like overexcited to meet people. And so basically I'll be shaking hands and I will miss every single cue out there to the point where I'm pretty sure I have annoyed some people. But like, it's not ill-intentioned, but the reason why I bring that up is because I've always viewed film, theater, anything like that as an opportunity to not only like grow professionally, but an area to grow and make friends. Like, to me, anyone I have on set or anyone I work with, like, I look at them not only as like, oh, something I can get out of like professionally from them. I look at them as like, these are amazing people. I want to be friends with them. And so I've really viewed film and theater and anything I do nowadays as an opportunity to make a friend. And I think, like, I met some amazing people. Like, I don't think there's a single person out there I've met during the 48 process, for example, where I was like, you look at someone like, I don't want to be your friend. And it's like, no, I want to be friends with every single goddamn person that has done film 48. Like, I want to know you all. And like, obviously, like, not everyone's into that for sure, but I really think getting to know the people during this entire process is the most rewarding thing possible. And don't just, when you meet someone on set, don't just be like, hey, only professional. I don't think that's the way to go about it. I think the connections you make with people on set are things that are going to just define your entire life and define you as a person and I think it's just amazing. So in terms of inspiration for me, of what keeps me going is the people I've met along the way. And I can't say enough about it.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad that you've been able to, find that in filmmaking. It's, the building relationships is such a big part of the whole process. Because, I mean, there was one time in film school that I made a short film all by myself just to see what it would be like to just make like a short film where no one else was involved in the whole process. Not even because I like thought it was going to be good. It didn't turn out phenomenal, honestly. But people say, oh, you can't make a film alone. I'm like, well, what happens if you try to do that? And it's such a fascinating thing where filmmaking does require collaboration on it, which isn't true for every other art form. I don't know if it's always going to be true for film, but it's something that in order for it to be alive, I guess, it needs to have those relationships. Even whether it's like whether you're friends or not, like you need lots of people to make it happen. But I think that's great that you have such a. It seems like you really have a clear and positive, like just thoughtful approach to how you're like going at filmmaking. Like you're talking about, oh, this is how, like the social benefits that you get from it, but then also pushing yourself into directions that you're not as comfortable with, or that you view as a weaker part of your skill set, perhaps, to always improve on it. That side of it, of like really attacking those parts where you can see that improvement's possible. You explain the reasoning for that, where like at some point you're going to need to do that thing. If you're not ready, it's going to be a problem. But where did you get that that kind of approach to work for your work ethic from?
Obviously, in terms of the actual work ethic itself, my dad. But in terms of like the strategy behind it, I have found that when I am really weak in something, it bothers the hell out of me. Like, I remember when I was acting and whatnot, and naturally I'm a little bit more an extrovert. And so, like, I kind of found, like, being in front of people and being on stage was fairly easy for me in that sense. Like, obviously, you still have to develop in that area, but I was just naturally more inclined. And then I remember one thing for the longest time I refused to do in high school was do the musical in high school, because I was like, I can't sing. I can't sing at all. And that eats at me. Like, I don't know if you've ever had something where it's like, oh yeah, I can do this pretty well, but like there's this one thing I don't do well, and that will just eat away at you. For me, like, if I see something I am weak at, it makes me uncomfortable. I think about it at night. Like, it's at the back of my brain and I can't shake it. And so, like, it's kind of like over the years, it's sort of developed into like you attack where you're weak, and it'll make you a more well-rounded person. And that's sort of where it came from, is like I didn't really develop that sense of thought process until when I was at maybe CCAC for about a year. You have to attack where you're weak, otherwise you're not going to grow as a person. And I have found that more often than not, wherever you're weak, it will come back and bite you. So it's better to be more proactive about it and more positive about it than it is to just sit and go, I'm really good at this, I'm just going to do that. That's sort of the thought process behind it.
Yeah, well, it's shown some growth and improvement for your work so far, so it seems to be heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
Like, helping with that, so that's great. Well, fantastic. Kind of going in another direction here with stuff. You've worked with a lot of comedy. You're heading toward drama here. So, talking about genres here. Are the types of films that you make and are looking at making, do those reflect the kinds of films you like to watch?
Really depends. Like, I'll reframe this in a way where I think every piece of work that you look at, especially something that's had time put into it, has something underneath the surface that you can really dig into. Like, for example, when I go to see a live theater performance like at Pittsburgh COO, the one thing I can't stand is to go by myself. And the reason why I can't stand to go by myself is, like, there's no one to really talk to about what you saw. Like, because one thing about theater, for example, is you look at it and most shows have a message of some sort and they're trying to get something across. And you look at that and you're like, you can't just turn to your right and start talking to yourself. Like, there's one of the best parts about, like, watching a film or watching a live performance is you get to talk about it with someone. You get to really delve into the meaning of, like, behind the work and really just go like, okay, what kind of message were they trying to get across? How'd you feel about this? Did it come across poorly? Was it very clear? Because a lot of the times I think you'll find is everyone has their own opinion. And, like, yeah, I know opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. But I think we're kind of like in a time period where, like, not everyone's like on board with that. And I really like getting another person's perspective. So if you ask me what kind of films I like to watch, it's typically something I can sit down and with another person, watch it, and then talk about it afterwards. Like, let's see. Like, I love comedies. I do. Like, those I can watch by myself. But when it comes to a dramatic piece, like, that's not something I don't think I could probably watch by myself. I can't watch them by myself at all. Like, I remember my all-time favorite show, like, music-wise, is Pippin.
Okay.
And basically, your plot of Pippin is basically you've got a young man, like, obviously, like, born into wealth and whatnot. He wanted his life to be exciting. He wanted his life to have meaning and purpose, and that's something I could have gotten behind. Like, when I watched it, I was just like, okay, this reminds me of me, because I went through a very, like, bad depressive period when I was younger, and it was like I wanted meaning, I wanted purpose, like, I hated, like, the menial everyday like activities, because I was like, well, what's the meaning behind it? Like, why is this important? And the entire show like goes through, like, at one point he goes like through like he starts sleeping with everyone, everything that moves, and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, the meaning of life is to have fun. I was like, no, that's not it. So then he's like, that's not fulfilling. He goes to war and he finds out war is hell and there's a lot of people dying, and then he ends up like killing his dad and like taking over the kingdom and whatnot. And then he abolishes taxes. Like, he was like, no one's paying taxes. And then when someone comes to the front door and it's like, okay, we're here to take you over, he's like, okay, military, go get him. And they're like, with what money? You just stop taxing everyone. You can't. So like, he kind of learned really quickly, like, oh, it's hard being a leader. You can't do that. Like, and then he started turning everything back. So he didn't have the experience to really like go through life and learned everything that he didn't like that his dad was doing. Like, oh, there was reasoning behind it. And then all of a sudden his dad comes back to life and he's like, sorry, Dad. It's cool. It's cool, son. Mm. And then he ends up like on a farm, depressed, and he finds the love of his life, Catherine. You know, she has a kid, and the message, I think he almost kills himself at the end. And I think the message from that show, like at the end, is compromise is a beautiful thing. Because there's one song in there, Extraordinary, and it was like, patching the roof, pitching the hay is not my idea of a perfect day. Like, he just starts singing about like how he does not like doing everyday chores and whatnot. And he kind of comes to find that that's a necessary part of life. It's something everyone has to do. And you have to trade something to get something back. Mm-hmm. Is what I've kind of taken away from it. I could be completely wrong. But I think that's the beautiful part of theater. That's the beautiful part of film, is digging in, finding your own meaning behind a piece of work and talking about it with someone else.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I like to watch when I have someone else with me.
Mm-hmm. I definitely feel that there's... it fascinates me that two people can watch the same movie and have completely different reactions to it. I don't just mean like whether they like it or not, but, you know, have very different emotional reactions to it and interpretations, because it's like we watched the same thing, right? You know?
Yeah.
But it's, when you have a film that some people have a really big problem with that film, and some people it means a lot to them or whatever. It's or, you know, getting into the messaging where you might zero in on a different character than somebody else. The thing that gets me is now getting to the point where I'm rewatching movies that I've, you know, seen off and on my whole life, and going through different stages of my life now, identifying with different characters in the same film than I used to, you know, like just like getting different stuff out of the same pieces that I'm seeing. You know, it's like, oh, I saw this as a kid and I really looked at this character more and was like, oh, I want to be more like that. Or then now watching it and, you know, seeing the value of a different part of it, and it's like, yeah, it's the same movie, but I've changed and what I'm getting out of it is different. And that's something that, you know, is part of what I love about cinema or music or whatever. It's just something where you're never going to finish it. You know, it's like there's never a point where you can't become a better musician, right? You know, it's a lifelong pursuit. And watching movies or making them, you know, is like definitely the same. It's that same stuff of the world that exists, but you're never going to get to the end of it. And that's, you know, endlessly rewarding. You know?
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is 100%. There's always going to be work out there for you to consume, for you to watch, and it's going to be endless because the more people are born, the way the world changes, new things are to come to light every single day. Mm-hmm. And it's great. You're never going to know what you're going to see out there.
Mm-hmm. So I want to start to see about kind of wrapping up with a few more questions here. when you've and just topics to have, but I kind of asked this earlier. I liked the answer you had, but I'm gonna ask sort of similar thing again, which is, do you have any are there hobbies outside of or interests outside of theater and filmmaking that you have in particular?
Just interest, not
Yeah,
that
I mean, it could be hobbies, it could be activities, or whatever. Like, do you do paintball? What's your deal, man?
Huh. I have many deals.
Yeah.
Let's see. For a while there, I was going to Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Cool.
I love card games. I love sports. Played them in high school. Football, I played. Basketball, I sucked at. Never got a chance to play it. Baseball, I never got the chance to play it. I do love I love sports in general, so I think sports are great. I love card games. Oof. My big thing has always been theater, film, sports, card games, hanging out with friends. Like, you want to know who Jake is, like, look at the things that he does, and the big thing is look at his friends. I remember my third grade teacher, support teacher, because I had a support teacher, and I refused to learn how to ride a bike. I didn't want to touch a bike. I had no interest in it. I would rather run if I had to go
How
anywhere.
come? Was it you were worried about falling over, or just?
I mean, a little bit, but it was like, okay, it's a bike. Why would I ever need a bike? And my support teacher went, set up a day, to my parents, set up a day where he has to hang out with a friend, and he has to ride a bike, and he will not get off that bike until he knows how to ride it, because he knows he's going to have to hang out with a friend and ride a bike. And soon enough, the moment I was told, hey, you're going to be riding bikes with your friend Ryan or whatever, and I was just like, okay, I'm learning how to ride a bike. I got up, learned how to ride a bike, so that's... I will learn how to do something on very short notice if I know I'm going to be hanging out with a person, even if I've never done it before. I pick up things fairly quickly, and just because I get very hyperfixated, I will go anywhere with anyone, not really have any fear about it, because it's just like, okay, it matters who you're with, not what you're doing, is one of my big things. Is as long as you're with people you like, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, because you're going to have a fun time regardless, is one of the big things about me. So, yeah, that's, if you want a deep dive into the things I like to do, that's me.
Yeah. That's awesome. It sounds like you've got a lot of yourself figured out, too. You're just very aware of what your approaches are, how you learn, all this stuff. It's really cool to talk with you about this kind of thing. Yeah. So, all right. Well, fantastic. What we'll do is in the description of the video, we'll have the link to Holes of Glory. It's a very funny film. Make sure you check that out, everybody.
Yeah.
But is there any social media or anything that people could follow you on or anything like that?
Yeah. I'm on Facebook, Jacob Hecht. Feel free to hit me up on Messenger if you have any questions or want to talk to me. I love talking with people. I've got an Instagram. I use it. I promise. I just got to look at what my name is.
We can put it.
Yeah,
we'll put it in the
link.
description.
Put
it's
it
the
in the
modern age.
description.
You don't have to read it out. It's fine. Well, fantastic. Well, Jake, I've had a wonderful time talking with you.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing this project that you're putting together. It sounds really exciting. The premise is, what a sad inciting incident you concocted. But I'm looking forward to it. So whenever you've got that done, I'd love to see it. Maybe you or other members of your team could come on the show and talk about it if you're looking to promote stuff.
I'd be down for that.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thanks again for being my guest.
Oh, 100%. loved being your guest.
Oh, thank you. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed that episode of the StudioMEcast. I've been your host, Peter Regan, and please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, etc., all that fun stuff, and we hope to have you join us next time. And don't forget, you can book one of our studios at StudioME.me. Have a wonderful weekend. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to start your own podcast, why wait? Reach out to us at StudioME.me, and I hope you hear me again soon.